Welcome to what I think I'm calling Grow for the Growth of All. That's just a name I came up with this week. If I had a podcast, what it would be called.
Can I give you like some notes on how to say it?
Yes.
All right. I would want to hear you say it like, grow for the growth of all.
All right.
Just try it. Can you do a take like that, please?
All right. Welcome to Grow for the Growth of All.
Yes. That is a fuck yeah from me.
Well, welcome, Shana Troy, to the inaugural podcast here. By way of introduction, Shana and I have known each other. God, we've known each other for well over almost a decade now, right? Or more. 15.
I think
We met at Burning Man at Heebie Jeebie Healers, which is a camp of healers. And so when I made the list of friends of mine who I think have interesting things to say and are about evolving the consciousness of the world and are fun, like Shana, you're like at the top of the list.
Thank you. That's how I want to be known.
Yes.
So thank you for seeing me as I would like to be seen.
Nice.
Good. Feels so good.
And so how's your apocalypse going?
My apocalypse is different every day, sometimes twice a day, with a mood change up. It feels like it's been so long that I don't even remember who I was in the beginning. Like spring is a scant memory to me now. Back then, I think I used to hike a lot. I was very fit, working on myself a lot. Now, there's a little more anxiety. I'm sort of more puddly. It's very hot in New York. So it's like, you just want to wear the loose bra and kind of try not to generate any charge or current. So it feels a little lonely, a little like wafting through the hot streets of Nyack, kind of like off my leash, but lazy. Yeah, that's this moment's vibe.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing how adaptable we are? Like, I mean, it's amazing because I look back at like what my life was like 3 months ago or even 4 months ago, and it's like unrecognizable from today. And at the same time, if you would have told me this is what it was going to be, I'd have told you that's going to be horrible.
Right.
And, there's parts of it that aren't great, but there was parts about that that weren't great.
Yeah.
It's just a real lesson for me in how adaptable we are as humans.
Yeah. Do you feel like it has been more not great for you personally than a normal period of time, or more great?
Oh, it's been much better, actually.
Okay.
Well, actually, no. That's right now. That's the case. It's so funny how like whatever your current mood is gets like stretched out to the future and the past so quickly. When you go to the grocery store and you're hungry, it's like you'll never be full, so buy everything. And when you go and you're full, you're like, I'll never be hungry again. And
it's true. And for more spiritual states too, like when I have things going my way, I'm like, I am made of gold. Nothing has ever touched me or ever could. And when I'm not up, it feels like, well, I guess these are where the failure years begin.
I think it's driven by a desire for certainty, that actually we want certainty more than we want happiness. We want to be seen as a contiguous thing instead of a phenomenon that's constantly changing. And so as a result, if we're not feeling good, it looks like we were always not feeling good.
I actually want to go back and challenge that we want certainty more than we want happiness. I would offer a variation on that, which is we want whatever we're feeling to be a little bit better. And I think when it feels really bad, we dare not dream of something as lofty as happiness. So we just aspire for certainty, which is like a little better than uncertainty. But it's not even in the gray. It's just neutral. Like I just want the absence of crippling anxiety. That's all I dare to hope for right now. But I think when things are good and things are working for us, we're like, this isn't enough anymore. Like I want happiness. And like I deserve happiness, and everything else is taken care of, so I have the leisure to pursue happiness. And my needs are met. I'm stable, so I have the psychic bandwidth to practice sort of enlightenment exercises and do self-care and like only do things that feel good.
I think that's a really good point.
Okay, I came up with an idea.
Okay.
What if we take turns asking each other the questions that we've always wanted to ask each other, but we have to be honest, 100% honest.
Right, right. And we both get final cut, so it doesn't matter what we say.
Oh, I love it. Okay. Yeah. And not brutally honest. Like, I don't want you to be mean to me or vice versa, but just like self-honesty. Like, oh,
Yeah,
you go there.
yeah. I got one. You were talking about this range of being like when you're really happy, and then you can think about all these really lofty things. And when you're like in crippling anxiety, all you want is to not have crippling anxiety. Where do you find yourself on that spectrum right now, and why?
I'll start by telling you where I am now, but I also want to throw in a caveat of where I normally am, just so it makes sense in context. So now, on good days and on the occasional bad day, like a 4, or once in a while a dip down to a 3.
Mm-hmm.
Where
it's lower than usual for you, right? Like in your
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of 3 or even 4 days under regular life circumstances. I might have frustration, or like if I felt left out one day, like, a little personal problem here or there. But generally speaking, I don't get consumed by my emotion. Like, a negative emotion doesn't generally get me in its grip. But I have days where I'm just like needing to be talked down by someone who knows that I'm looking to like hack my own mind's tendencies and kind of wrestle the negative tendencies into a better place. And so I'm looking for kind of coaching is what I'm looking for, like on the spot coaching from a friend who knows me.
Yeah. Well, hey, call me anytime.
Okay. Thank you. Great. Yeah, I will.
And how are you doing with being okay with not being okay?
Oh yeah, really don't like not being okay. So I'm really not okay with not being okay.
Yeah.
I know. It's just like the only way is through,
Yeah.
but I really don't like to go through it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably what's hard. But probably the resistance is the harder part. I don't know, what would it feel like to be good with it? I was good. Yeah.
I don't think you want to be like resigned to it in the sense of like,
right.
not like fuck it, whatever, who cares? But more like an opportunity to see it as, what is this here to teach me? How can this too shall pass, and not try. Yeah. I think I'm like this too. We grew up in the self-help world, in the like be great kind of all the time thing, and there's a certain maladjustment with that sometimes. It's very hard to accept where you're at and just be radically accepting of current circumstances. And I often find that it's the counterintuitive thing. Like, I'm not one of these people, you're not one of these people that's going to like get stuck. So you don't have to worry too much that like, if you accept this, that all of a sudden you're like subject to a life of pain. But just being able to just stop the trying to change it, like accept a certain kind of amount of suffering and pain associated with life. And this is what we're in right now, and like mine it for all it's worth, because all the best art, all the best, like the phoenix that is you that will rise out of this and become something, and you'll be looking back on it, you'll be helping others through this very thing in a not too distant future.
Yes. And that has been the upside of this, is it's been a real like popcorn spiritual growth happening during this time. Like, I've spent a lot of time getting stoned, going for long hikes, and thinking, and catching up with the backlog of thoughts that I wanted to spend some time chewing on, and then like actually getting to do it and having that insight, which is, there's dopamine hits associated with that, where you're like, that's what I'll do next. Or, if only I had thought about it this way. And it brings a really good feeling with it to know that there's time for self-work, and that it's not just about the mask or what's out there for public consumption. So I feel like I'm maskless a lot of the time, because I'm literally not facing any other people. unless I'm on a Zoom call or with my husband and daughter, or the occasional like socially distanced hangout outdoors. But that's a lot of time to just like be in your own home, cook in your own energy, think about your own thoughts, go deep with people on the phone. There isn't really like a lot of frivolous contact right now. When you're talking to somebody, it's like, how is COVID affecting your soul? Is like, instead of how are you, how people just open the conversation. So every encounter is precious and is interesting. It's like a web series of little vignettes as opposed to just a continuous like barrage of social interaction. So you can really savor. That's been, I guess, a good word for this, is to savor things that I rushed through before.
Yeah, and I wonder if all of this space to have all the thoughts and all this freedom to go inward is a double-edged sword, right? On the one hand, it's great because you kind of finally get to kind of do all those things you craved that you wanted before you never had time because there was all this input. But I also think that it, much like a silent meditation retreat will kind of be very difficult for people. It's similar in the sense that there aren't the distractions to distract you from the things that you thought you wanted to process, but you really didn't,
Yeah.
And so other stuff is coming up, and it's sometimes tough to go through the gunk of that. And wherever you go, there you are. And normally,
truly.
wherever you go, you aren't, because there's enough stuff happening and there's enough centrifugal force of your life to keep you on the edges instead of in the middle. But when the centrifugal force sort of slows down, all of a sudden you get to explore this like centerpiece on this merry-go-round.
Yes.
The reason that stuff got stuck in there, like there's good stuff in there, there's gold in there, there's also a lot of gunk in there. And I wonder, if that's part of it too. I mean, I know I've gone through that up and down aspect of it where I have times where I really like just feel stuck with myself and with my anxiety and my panic, and then other times where I just feel like it's the most amazing time in my entire life. There's so many things I thought I needed, I don't need. And so much, like, I just have discovered how much I love my own company. And like being less leaning in to connection as a palliative, but more leaning into it as an expression, as something that is what I am, not what I need.
Right. Yes. I love that. And there's like a theme that's going on with the growth that COVID is making available around introverts and extroverts as well. Because I feel like usually the universe just wafts gifts at the extroverts, like reward, good. It's good to be the way you are, and now life is like, take a seat, extroverts. Go within, deal with your shit. Don't stop. The dance is in here also, because a lot of the introverts.
Revenge of the Nerds. It's like Revenge of the Introverts.
Yes. The introverts I speak to are mostly doing great. They really are, like, having a good time, and they guiltily say, because I coach some introverts, they're like guilty because they're like, I'm having a great quarantine and I feel bad because a lot of people are suffering. I'm like, I'm glad someone out there is vibing happiness. Like, good. If you're happy, that's a net gain for the world.
Well, I feel like
I wouldn't rub it in, but
I always thought of myself as an extrovert, like kind of like an extreme extrovert. I think someone once referred to me as a compulsive extrovert, or some sort of like pejorative intensity around my extroversion.
Was it masturbatory?
What you would say? I'm masturbatorily extroverted.
I masturbate to it. This is going to be a funny alternative. Put it up on the list of maybe.
By the way, that's I didn't realize you just named like the ultimate fantasy for me. Like that I would just talk and somebody would get off so much on it.
This is who we're looking for as an audience for the podcast. So if that is you, tune in to just what you can even write into Troy. Let him know what you want him to expound upon, whatever gets you off, and he will talk.
It's funny, that reminds me of being at a restaurant, something I always wanted to do. It's not that I want to masturbate to it, but maybe is at restaurants, when you have somebody come up who's really good at talking about the food, and you're like, oh, it's got the almond sauce over the this, and it's like all these like really intricate words, and it just sounds like poetry.
Yeah.
I always wanted to take a really good microphone with all the background noise of restaurant and just record the best people at that game and
Wow.
make it into tracks on like Spotify. You could have a whole channel where you could just sit back and like listen to people talk about food, but like not about.
You know what this is? This is a subgenre. This is a new subgenre of ASMR. What is it? This is your brand of ASMR. Oh my God. So I used to be one of those waiters. I've worked at fancy restaurants in New York City. And so was my ex. And, my impetus when I was waiting tables, this is what motivated me. I wanted to render perfect service, like as expediently as possible, while engaging as little of my soul as possible. So those are my two objectives, like giving you nothing but perfect service.
Were you a trainer? Is that what you taught people? Save your soul for home. While you're here, get people food. That's what they came here for. They don't give a shit about who you are.
Yeah. Make sure their water is always like at a good level. Make sure they want for nothing. Explain if something's going to be late. Like be very clear. On the other hand, my ex was a waitress, and she worked for what is perennially voted as the fan favorite New York City restaurant in Zaggett's Guide for years running.
You always go
so she would describe having like a table of Wall Street bros that are there on expense account, and they would always be like chatting and one-upping each other and being like asserting their masculinity. So to capture their attention, because they were like not hearing her or seeing her, she would lean into the space physically and go, "Good evening," and like scoop the energy of their attention and pull it toward her like this. It was like a Mr. Burns, like, "Good evening." I've always thought that would be a nice persona to have. Why are we talking about this? How did we get here? Can you remind me, please? I lost the thread.
Because you were one of the people who spoke the menu items like terms that were super enticing. And I love words, and I love to eat, and I love people's personas, so the way that sells, the way they like lean in, the way they make it sound enticing. It's the reason I love karaoke, like not just to do it, but the why I like watching people do karaoke, because it's one of these everyday performance kind of things. I love to see people's like unique characters and essences.
My fear about karaoke, because I haven't watched a lot of it, and there's something that scares me about it, because the feeling in my heart of seeing somebody who is really frightened and really bad at performing up there, scared shitless about to have to perform, that feels as dark to me as the darkest nightmare. And so I'm afraid it would just like, I would just be on tenterhooks as each person got up there, like praying that they don't enact my worst nightmare in front of me.
Oh, right. It's like watching Ben Stiller in something.
Like a cringe-worthy performance. Yeah. But not because they're bad, but because they're afraid.
Yeah, right. Because you can tell that they're a little over their skis in terms of their exposure.
Yeah. Yes. Do you feel that, and does it bother you, or is that besides the point?
Well, if someone's an interesting performer and they're scared, that's interesting. It's not good, and they're so hidden that they can't like it. Then it's just whatever. Then you talk. You just have.
Okay.
It's a karaoke bar. You don't have to pay attention.
So I was scarred at a young age on this exact type of dynamic that we're talking about. My first job out. Not by performing, no, but like I guess the psychological substrata is that I used to want to be an actress and a singer, like a Broadway singer, but I was just not good enough. And I personally felt a terror of auditions or getting up there and like not sounding as awesome as I wanted to sound. So what I became instead was a casting director. I'm sure you can imagine psychological reasons for wanting to be in
so
the.
Good at a casting director. Oh my God.
I was really good. I was good.
You have you really sense into what's needed at a very nuanced level about what's happening character-wise with people.
Yeah.
Totally see it.
Sometimes I wish I had stayed in that field, but so this was an early job. I was an intern, and we had to cast the role in a movie Caught that was a young stand-up comic, and he had to be Hispanic. That was what the script called for, and 23, 24 years old. So we asked the Comedy Cellar to pull together from their roster of comics that they know a little evening just for my boss and me. And so we went and sat in an empty comedy club, just us, with the lights out and the spotlight on the stage, and then a row of very, very green, very inexperienced, aspiring comics came one by one in front of us and gave us their best set directly to us, making direct eye contact. And it was bad. It was not polished comedy. These were not good comedians. And they're getting their big chance. And so the flop sweat and the inexperience.
There's just nothing worse than a bad comedian. That's
oh my God.
That is worse than bad character.
Yeah. And I'm sorry to everyone who's listening and whose skin is now crawling. Just know that I kept a rictus of encouragement on my face for 2 hours straight.
Did you find a good person for the role?
Not there.
Yeah.
No. We did eventually, but not from that evening.
How did you eventually find the person?
Agents submitting people that they represent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did a stand-up comedy once. I had been visiting my friend in Ann Arbor because I was there. I would go there for business. I was selling renewable energy to all the automakers. And I would stay with a friend, and my friend was a stand-up comedian. So I would always go see her perform and then spend time with her friends and see other people perform. And some of them were good and some of them weren't. But there was just this collection of comedians, and they would hang out and everything. And at some point I was like, you know what? I could do this. So I started just writing books in my spare time. And then I came out there once and I wanted a workshop. We all hung out and I was like, all right, I want to do a 5 or 10 minute thing at the open mic. And they're like, oh, yeah, your first time. We all remember our first time. It's going to be terrible. You're going to bomb. Don't worry about it. I went down and I walked through all the jokes, and they're like, okay, that one's not funny. That's funny. Okay, but it would be funnier if this, or there's too much preamble on that one, or whatever. So they helped me work it out. And then I got up.
Nice.
And I did it. And it was maybe, I don't know, there was 25 people, 20 people in the audience. Half of them were other comedians. It was one of these situations.
Yeah.
Right? And it was at the Heidelberg in Ann Arbor, for those that, it's kind of a thing. And for all the Ann Arbor people out there.
Shout out.
I'm huge in Ann Arbor.
It's kind of a big deal in Ann Arbor.
But anyway, I went up and I did it. And people laughed a lot. And they laughed at the stuff that I didn't think they would laugh at, and they didn't laugh at the stuff I thought they would laugh at.
That's so cool. Good for you. Wow, that's really, you got lucky. You had a good support crew, a great environment. You're good. You were good. You had a knack.
Also, I was not nervous to bomb. I spent time on stage before that. I don't have the usual fears most people have about that.
All right, I have your question for you now.
All right, go for it.
It's a two-parter.
Oh.
The first part is, I would like you to describe yourself as if you were the teenage male lead of a sitcom, featuring a sitcom version of you, how you were as a teenager. So I want you to describe how that character would be described.
Accurately, like a dramatized version of me in high school?
A sitcom version of you in high school. So dialed up for a little bit of extra.
Okay, all right. The thing is that it's hard to dial me up more than I was in my high school yearbook. This will give you everything you need to know. Okay, I won most spirited because I was the student government president, but I was also the mascot for the it was a Revolutionary War soldier. Yeah.
Hot.
Like a weird.
Hot. Did you wear?
I had a big face so you couldn't tell it was me, but everybody.
Oh, okay.
And
That is amazing. That is so New England. What would you?
New
Were you
Jersey.
called like the? Were you called like the fighting colonialists or like the revolution?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
The
Raiders.
Then I also won done most for class and most likely to be a politician.
Wow, they got it. They nailed it on across every measure.
Well, I'm not a politician. Is this a compliment or are you ribbing me? I can't tell.
It's both. I like to rib you and I like to laugh. And you are just a politician who has not taken office yet.
Well, politicians aren't really well thought of these days.
Well, I'm not saying you're like them, but I think it is an archetype. I think the archetype of the politician is one who makes an agenda item, popularizes awareness,
Sure.
Presents cohesive arguments in favor of whatever perspective you're advocating for. Hopefully it's one that you're morally aligned with. That's where our politicians fall down. And like persuade people that it's a good idea. And that's what you do. People gravitate toward you because you're a storyteller with flair, and we learn stuff by hanging out around you, and you make it interesting. Okay, so the sitcom about you. So I'm getting a picture that you were a well-liked high school gentleman.
I was well known, but I wasn't part of a crew. I was actually kind of lonely in school. I didn't quite figure out belonging until much later in my life. I really thought that achievement was the way that I would belong, but then whenever I would achieve, I wouldn't feel belonging because it was like a little lonely at the top kind of thing. But I was well liked and I was a curious person, but I wasn't like good at school. I was a bit disruptive at times in class. I wasn't like a goody.
ADD.
Yeah, I wasn't a goody two shoes, right? Yeah, I was totally ADD. I don't know how I did not get diagnosed with that at that time. I didn't get great grades. I got okay grades. And I was disruptive in class, but I was also all this other thing. So most people would look at me and they think, "Oh, wow, he's goody two shoes," but I wasn't. I was rebellious. So I don't know what's the plot of this sitcom.
But it's like this rebellious yet sort of smooth and connected high school boy who, what is there like a gets the girl, or is it a gets a comeuppance, or is it like a fish out of water? Like you get sent to a very different kind of school and you have to sort of build your rep all over again. Like what's the narrative line from your actual high school?
I'd say the storyline is maybe more of like what I said, which is kind of well-liked, charismatic person who was also really overcoming loneliness or overcoming a sense of not belonging despite all of the kudos. And like maybe a bit of a precociousness that kind of made it maybe hard to connect in some ways.
There is now a saying for kids who experience that, and I think it's the curse of the gifted child. Do you know about this?
No.
It talks about exactly this, Troy. Yeah. You're not alone on an island in that experience. It's been studied and written about that's a phenomenon where kids who are gifted, like you were, like they can't connect because other kids aren't there.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, who are the others like you that can speak on that level, or whatever it was that you had that was like kind of different and advanced compared to your classmates that could have wound up being something that you're like, oh, I need peers.
Right.
It's good to have a peer. Yeah. I've always valued having a best friend, and the times when I've had a best friend, like a number one best friend, have been the happiest years of my life. Like thinking back on my school years, and it wasn't every year that I had that, but when I did, just to like have that person who understands you, to go through life with that, like someone to check in on a daily basis, like what are you wearing, or what did you think about what so-and-so said in class?
So how about you? What would your high school?
Oh my God, it would be a drama. It would not be a sitcom. It would be a drama.
It would be a drama. It'd be like Dawson's Creek, or like.
No, there is actually a show that I always think of as like, that's the poster to my high school experience. And it was a B movie called Angel. And I remember the tagline was, Hollywood hooker by night, straight A student by day. I neither grew up in Hollywood nor was a hooker.
Okay.
But the sentiment or the sense of that statement was who I was in high school. I had a best friend who was very, very naughty, and we were very, very naughty together. So I would say there was I don't want to say criminal just because I don't want to use that word to describe myself. And I was just a cute little teenager, but I also don't not want to say criminal. So that was an element. But then also I was at boarding school getting A's and going to an Ivy League university.
So you're very deep and introspective and observant and curious. Was that a quality that you honed and developed as you got older, or do you feel like if you were hanging out with your teen self right now, do you think you had the vibe?
Yeah. So the vibe, what was coming off me at the time, as I was experiencing it, I was bubbling over with aliveness. Like it came from having so much energy and smarts and horniness and hunger for life and mischief, deep, deep mischief, and like a love of breaking the rules. It was lived with such fierce love for fucking shit up. So trying new things was a motive in and of itself. Like I wanted to try everything, every drug.
Were you introspective about it? Was it just about experience, or were you able to be like, wow, well, that was a little different than this other thing, and this is why? Like, were you psychoanalyzing the world?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Gosh. Like one of my pinnacle memories was at 15, I had gone to prom. We stayed up all night and had deep conversations. We were debating whether or not people are essentially altruistic. So we had sort of, independent of not having read anything about it, but just stumbled on this curiosity about altruism and stayed up until the sun rose talking about that. So it was not just experience for sensation, because I'm not your classic like adrenaline junkie. I don't want to fall. I'm not good at sports. I'm scared to get hurt about some things, but I wanted to like flash life in my face and then like think about it, or like what does that mean, or what are all the people types out there, and well, how do I feel if I do this, and how do I feel if I do that, and whoa, that was hard, or like that's a new emotion. I'm like, oh, okay, shame, like what's that about?
Did you have a diary or a journal when you were in high school?
I didn't start keeping a diary until I was 24.
Oh, wow.
And then I did the artist way and I did morning pages, but I filled a shelf with composition notebooks.
There's a part of me that's really disappointed that you didn't keep a journal when you were in high school.
I'm more of an oral storyteller.
You've heard of Mortified, right?
I don't think so.
Oh, it's this performance that goes around, and basically people send in their best stuff from growing up, and then they get chosen and they rework it a little bit. When I go back to mine would never be good because I was very similar to how I am now. You go back and read the stuff I was writing when I was 12, 13, 14, 15. You know, I was writing about like, man, if I could just get up early in the morning, if only I would actually do the readings that were assigned to me, I'd be a straight A student. You know, like this was what I was writing about at 13.
Oh my God, you were life coaching yourself. You needed like an executive coach.
I needed an executive coach. If only I had rich parents, and that was a thing then.
So can I ask you the part two of the question? I would like to know what it feels like to be you, but to be you in a very specific slice of your experience. There's an aspect of you I find fascinating and wonderful. It's like you are very successful and you are very confident and self-assured. And I feel like you've always had that trait. And I think I've been up and down and in and out with it. And I've had to more like work to get it. But it sounds like even at a young age, you had that. And I just want to know, like, energetically, what does it feel like to sit in the center of solidness, self-confidence? Like, what's it like to be you?
It's hard to know what water you swim in if you've always swam in it. At the same time, there's also a part of me that questions how confident I really am. Even now, you know, I think I actually which may be surprising to people, have always felt a lack of confidence in a lot of areas. I think a lot of people would be surprised to hear that I struggled with, loneliness and a lack of a sense of belonging for a good portion of my life. And really only in the last like 3 years, 4 years, have really felt like I figured out belonging in a key way. Part of the reason why I love leading things that create belonging and create on-ramps for connection is because I often don't feel like I belong or that I connect in a way that feels satisfying to me and to others out in the wild. The big aha for me came maybe 10 years ago, partly through some workshop stuff I did and also through psychedelics, where I realized that, oh, everyone struggles with this. And once you know that everyone's struggling with it, then you don't struggle as much because everyone's struggling with it. So it's like, it's the open secret. Once you know it's the open secret, then, it takes the sting out of it, because that problem with all that loneliness stuff is that you think you're alone.
Yeah.
What if
Yeah.
everybody's lonely and then we're not lonely anymore? It's kind of an interesting thing. But I will say that I was always very extroverted, and I think the world is made for extroverts. There's also white and male, a white male extrovert. The world could not possibly have been better set up for me. And then also, I care. I have a big heart. And so you add all those things up, and the red carpet just kind of gets rolled out for you.
Like heart-centered qualities cause a response in your life that then brings confidence to you. Your worthiness gets validated.
Yeah. And I also think that it's all very contextual. I think we like to think of ourselves as having a particular quality, but I think that it depends on the day and it depends on the context. Like, people see me get up on stage and be an MC and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe he just does it. He hardly has any notes. It's like, I've been doing that since I was in 6th grade. I did the morning announcements every single day from the time I was in 6th grade all the way till I graduated from high school.
So there's a generation of kids that grew up with your voice in their ears.
Yeah, they have heard me every day since middle school.
Did you have any like rituals that you would always do when you were doing the announcements, like a thing you'd say or a tagline?
Oh yeah, I did, and it changed throughout the years. God, I don't remember, but I did definitely have a sign off and a good morning thing. Oh, totally. In fact, one year I got in trouble because we started playing music. One day I put on Jimi Hendrix national anthem from Stock.
Yeah.
Which in the middle of the Star Spangled Banner, he starts creating these things that sound like bombs dropping. And the whole song starts to disintegrate in chaos, and it sounds like war, and it's horrible, right?
Yeah.
I got called into the principal's office and was like, that is not okay. You can't play something that desecrates the national anthem over the loudspeaker.
Oh, that is so punk rock. I love it.
I was like excited I got in trouble for that one. So, not to change the subject, but what's exciting to you right now?
What's exciting? It's interesting, that word, because it is a word that it's a feeling I tend to speak out a lot in normal circumstances.
Let me rephrase it.
Yeah.
It's not about exciting, but what's brewing?
So what's brewing is a change in the definition of brewing. So usually I brew, I'm the chef. I'm up there brewing up a storm, and like such a future tripper, always planning something, the next move, the next dream, the next vacation, the next conversation, the next class. And that how I would have answered this question prior to COVID would be like, oh, okay, well, here's my plans for this, that, and the other thing. I don't feel like I am brewing right now. I feel like I am being brewed. And the best I can do is allow myself to be brewed. And in other words, see what needs me, not what I want, not what I need, not what I'm going for, but how am I maintaining my instrument? How am I responding to what's coming at me? That's interesting to me right now, and experimenting with different ways to respond, you know, tasting it a little bit, numbing it a little bit, like enjoying it sometimes, fighting it sometimes, being washed over with the melancholy of it sometimes. So kind of getting brewed. Just discovered you can swim in the Hudson on a tiny little beach in a park near my house. So going and bobbing in bath water, warm Hudson River, gently lapping at the shore of a little teeny tiny pocket beach surrounded by green trees. That felt incredible, and just beautiful views of Westchester and Rockland County all around. Something simple things like that. Like when I can find something simple that gives me pleasure, a good sensation, and a lift to my mood,
Oh,
I'm about it.
oh, isn't it been wonderful? The elevation of the mundane during all of this has been a real amazing thing, you know, like smelling a rose
Yeah.
is like magical. When in your life has laying in water been like the highlight, right? There's something
Yeah.
beautiful about that. There's something
Yeah.
really beautiful about the little
Yeah.
things, the little simple things that would have been available to anybody at any point in all of like human history.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's appreciation. I'd say that's the best of what, you know, snagging my attention and my work right now. And there's something though that's missing. And usually when I feel something to be missing, it's first a curiosity. It has a chance to blossom, and then I go into like, how can I supply that thing that is missing, especially if it concerns people, because that's my area of interest. So I'm noticing that I have a lot of plot points of friendships and contact with people, be it a call, a text, a Zoom, whatnot, but it's missing the string that ties it together into a web. So I feel like I have dots, but not webbing. So another way to say the webbing is missing is I feel lonely. And so like that's been a theme in our conversation today, the loneliness you experience growing up. I'm feeling lonely right now, even if I might talk to several people a day, because I don't have the sense that we're in a community and there aren't group gatherings.
Right.
So while I've deeply enjoyed intimate conversations, this one included, I also am like yearning for that feeling of being outside in the sun with a big group of fun people who are like dressed to impress and like being upbeat. And
yeah, that group fun, that group feel where you feel like you're part of something, even if you're not really part of something, right? Like you're together.
Yeah.
You're together.
Yeah. Yeah. And that feeling of togetherness is what I'm trying to use the metaphor of the web to describe. It's like the string that connects. It runs through all of our hearts.
Have you listened to this new podcast called Together Apart?
Why have I heard of that? I have heard of that, but I don't remember why.
This is Priya Parker, who wrote the book, The Art of Gathering.
The Art of Gathering. She's wonderful. Yeah.
Right. So this is her podcast, and it's all how people are dealing with the new challenge of how do you gather people meaningfully online. And
yes,
I've only listened to 2 episodes, but they were both just absolutely fantastic. I have this belief that humans are magic, right? So whenever I put together like a group experience, it's the fundamental belief. And so if you believe that humans are magic and you're a human and the person you're talking to is a human, then is there a lot that you need to do? It's almost like what you need to not do. Just live into the possibility of that magic. All of a sudden opens different veins of gold that will show up in the improv of engagement. And that's sort of where the flow can kind of come in. And sometimes we need each other to bounce off of to kind of find that flow. Is part of the reason why podcasts that are conversations are so much better than people monologuing. There's this inner monologue going on inside our minds that is fine. It's great. Like, you know, that can be helpful. But when you can take that inner monologue and make it an outer interaction, that's what makes it come alive. That's what makes coaching so valuable.
Yeah.
It's always great to talk to you. I'm so glad that others are going to get a chance to like get a little glimpse of the magic that is you and I conversing about life,
Me too.
whatnot. It's great. And
This is a wonderful platform for us.
who knows? Maybe I will never publish it. It's just really a good context for us to have a good conversation.
Oh my God. Yeah. I love it. It was an on-ramp for connection. And I resonate with on-ramps for connection as well. I like structure. And I like for connection to be juiced up with a little of the old magic.
Have a great night. It's so great to talk to you.
You too.
Mwah.
Thanks. Mwah.